Viewer discretion is advised.
Minnesota Vikings Red McCombs. McCombs wasn't a terrible owner, though he did take a 15-1 Vikings team and turn them into shit. No, he was just in general a shitty person and a shady businessman. McCombs beefed with the Navajo Nation, beefed with adjacent landowners, and was convicted of tax avoidance. He also harshly criticized Charlie Strong when he was hired by Texas. McCombs sold the Vikings in 2004 to Ziggy Wolf, who is right behind him in terms of being a shitty owner. The worst trade in NFL history. Of course, it's the Minnesota Vikings. Herschel Walker. Thanks a lot, Minnesota. Without this trade, the Cowboys dynasty of the 90s probably doesn't happen. Look, this has been broken down before, but let's get to the aftermath. Essentially, in 1990, the Vikings traded 4 players and 8 picks to the Cowboys for running back Herschel Walker and some picks back, and somehow the Chargers were involved. I don't know. The picks the Cowboys received were turned into running back Emmitt Smith, defensive tackle Russell Maryland, cornerback Kevin Smith, safety Darren Woodson, and cornerback Clayton Holmes. They were all starters. Walker played 2.5 seasons in Minnesota and wasn't all that great. The Cowboys won 3 Super Bowls with the players I named, one of which is a Hall of Famer, and Darren Woodson damn well should be. The Vikings are still middling along and haven't been to a Super Bowl since the days of Fran Tarkenton. This was the Louisiana Purchase of trade. Minnesota Vikings Rob Brzezinski. Every Viking GM has done relatively well, even Dennis Green, and they all have over 500 records and all made the playoffs. So I had to give the title to Rob Brzezinski, who led the league in unnecessary Z's. The GM from 2002 to 2005, he is still in the front office and is known as a salary cap guru. If there is one stadium that I completely forgot that hosted the Super Bowl, it is the Metrodome, which held Super Bowl 26, a boring beatdown the Redacteds issued to the Bills. Damn, Bills fans, sorry. The Metrodome was loved by Minnesotans, and for the dual-use era, it was one of the better domes. Well, for football, and until the roof collapsed from snow. I'm still amazed that the NFL risked it all by putting the Super Bowl here in a cold weather city. It was demolished in 2014 and replaced by US Bank Stadium. The stadium known as the Bird Killer, as dumbass birds fly into its huge glass facade all day long, US Bank Stadium opened in 2016 and only 2 years later hosted Super Bowl 52, which saw the Eagles prevent Tom Brady from winning another ring, which was like terrible if you are a Giants fan like me. It's just the worst outcome possible. This is a great facility and likely impervious to snowfall, as the solid roof structure is translucent and lets in plenty of natural light, you know, so that it can kill birds. Minnesota Vikings. This one is probably the funniest scandal on here. In 2005, during their bye week, the Vikings wanted to let loose, so they, led by cornerback Fred Smoot, booked a cruise and loaded it full of hookers, some of which they trucked in as far as from 3 states away. Now, what does that tell you about the hookers in Minnesota? Back when cell phone cameras were literal baked potatoes, the players allegedly partook in lewd acts on the lovely Lake Minnetonka, so they thought they could do it out in the open and no one would say a word. Except, you know, the entire crew of the boat witnessed it all. Team discipline, though light, was enacted, and it gives new meaning to the term the Love Boat. Bud Grant. Bud Grant was the first person to be inducted into both the CFL and the Pro Football Hall of Fames. In his 28 seasons coaching in North America, he guided his teams to the postseason 20 times, reaching the championship game 10 times. And good on Bud, he won 4 of those 10, but none were the Super Bowl. Yep, Bud went 4-2 in CFL Grey Cups and became the first NFL coach to lose 4 Super Bowls. Damn, son. Shout out to Grant, who was drafted into the NBA by the Minneapolis Lakers and the Philadelphia Eagles of the NFL, first choosing basketball and winning an NBA title with the Lakers, but no NFL titles with those great Vikings teams. Also makes sense that he coached in the CFL because Bud Grant did not give a fuck about the cold. Minnesota Vikings, Teddy Bridgewater's knee injury in 2016. The Vikings' 2016 season came with a lot of expectations, and then in one moment, they were gone. Teddy Bridgewater suffered a catastrophic non-contact knee injury during training camp, and their season was fucked. Bridgewater's injury forced the team to trade for Sam Bradford,
And things were rough in Vikings country until Kirk Cousins was signed, and now savior Sam Darnold is under center.
Minnesota Vikings, Quan Treadwell. Treadwell was selected 23rd overall by the Vikings in the 2016 NFL Draft, and he looked like he was going to be a big steal. But his time in Minnesota, and really everywhere else he's been, has been nothing but disastrous. In 4 seasons with the Vikings, he barely put up 700 yards and scored just 2 touchdowns. He then bounced around to Atlanta, Jacksonville, Seattle, and Baltimore this past season, and the results have all been just the same, pretty miserable. He's one of those selections that makes you think, what the hell did people see in him to make him such a first-round pick? And since he's gotten chance after chance and failed time and time again, what the hell were scouts looking at? Minnesota Vikings, Kevin O'Connell. His first year was a fluky good season where they had an unsustainably good record in close games and therefore finished 13-4, and everybody knew that regression was coming, and that's exactly what happened, in addition to Kirk Cousins getting hurt. Well, now Kirk Cousins is gone, and really, I don't think anybody really knows just how good of a coach Kevin O'Connell is. I just feel like he's just kind of there. Through 2 seasons, he's 0-1 in the playoffs. They just drafted J.J. McCarthy, obviously, so they're going to give O'Connell probably a year or 2 of slack to see if McCarthy's any good. But I don't know, he's just kind of blah. So I would say his hot seat ranking, I'll give him like a 2 out of 5. The Vikings, J.J. McCarthy. He has a good arm, some good physical tools, but he was a game manager in college. He was on a loaded Michigan team with Harbaugh, and I can't really think of a lot of game managers in recent history that were game managers in college and ended up becoming elite NFL quarterbacks. He looks like he eats his own boogers, which really isn't an analysis of him as a quarterback, but I just wanted to put it there anyway. When I watched him, and I'm not going to pretend to be some college draft nerd or some draft expert, but, you know, I saw Michigan play because they're on TV a lot. I was never particularly like, wow, J.J. McCarthy, this dude's fucking incredible. You got to draft him. I never ever felt that way, particularly watching him in the college football playoffs. So his prove it rating is 10 out of 10, and I have my Minnesota Vikings, Byron Murphy Jr. Byron Murphy was supposed to be the big signing for the Vikings going into last season, and it's kind of weird because the Vikings defense was not bad, but it kind of wasn't because of Murphy. Murphy had been coming off of an injury. He played 14 games last year. For his career, he really hasn't had good numbers. He's given up a lot of touchdowns, and he's really not worthy, I think, of contract that the Vikings gave him. It's pretty much that simple. There's nothing really more to talk about. Sometimes it is that cut and dry, and this is one of those situations. Minnesota Vikings, Joe Kapp, 1967. Kapp was actually expected to be a good quarterback in the NFL, and he had one good season and appeared in a Super Bowl, but he was not the reason for the Vikings' success. The Purple People Eaters would be the cause of that. But anyway, in 1967, Joe Kapp completed 48% of his throws, 8 touchdowns to 17 interceptions, and a dreadful 48.2 rating. But hey, it was his rookie year. We can give him a pass for this, right? It's not like he's going to show up again.